Perfect. Well, thank you everyone to joining us for another Volie session. Excited to walk through this with you. Matt, thanks for taking the time. How's it going today?
Fantastic. There we go. Off mute.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. Today, we have Matthew Belk. He is the Chief Innovation Officer and founder of Better Car People. He was formerly the director of e-commerce for Hendrick Automotive Group for 10 years. And he co-founded Better Car People in 2010, which currently assists over 1,400 automotive dealers. He's a subject matter expert in online automotive retailing, recently completed MIT Sloan School of Management Executive Learning for Strategy and Innovation. And he and his wife, Stephanie, have 8 children and 10 grandchildren. Very excited to have you on here. A lot of experience with what we're going to be talking about. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Jake.
Absolutely. And before we go ahead and dive in, everyone, as always, feel free to type in any questions you have into the Q&A right here on the Zoom chat. And you can also send any questions you have to me at jake@volie.com. So with that said, today we are going to be talking about after hours leads and how to best follow up with them and what that process looks like. Obviously, with Better Car People, you guys do that. You're an expert in that. So with that said, first off, what is different when you're talking about leads that come in after hours?
Well, Jake, it's a bit of a passion of mine. It came out of necessity. When you're trying to reach a closing ratio, you have to look at where the leakage is, right? And so a big deal with after hours leads is just that you're not open, right? So that's a consumer that it is shopping at their time, and you have to figure a way to make them feel special and to get some value to them, even when you're not at the dealership.
Mm-hmm. And what percentage of, before we continue talking about this, what is the percentage of leads that come in after hours?
Okay, so I'm not sure about the audience, how many people, who we have from dealerships, stuff like that, but I'd love for you to run this report. Every CRM can do it. You got to usually ask on how to do that, but about 40% of leads come after hours, after you're closed. So it's insane. If you're trying to get the 15% closing ratio, right, on internet leads, it's very difficult when 40 out of 100 come after hours when you're closed and you don't respond until the next day. So that was the main thing at Hendrick when we were chasing the closing ratio. And I want to mention that's a lot of what we came up with Better Car People was based off of the 64 stores at Hendrick, 20 different manufacturers. We started with the internet in 2000. In 2007, the year that the iPhone came out, we sold 28,000 cars that started off with emails. So it was 35% of the business. So this was all based off of finding these little cohorts that we could do something special for and make sure, and that's how they would engage. So after hours was one of those. Obviously, it's massive. 40% of your leads. 40%
is huge. And I think I know the answer to this based off how you kind of answered that last one. As you said, it's kind of their time, customers reaching out on their time. Is this number increasing or decreasing?
It is absolutely increasing. So we used to 30% was back in the day. It ramped up a lot during COVID, during the epidemic. And we see just every year increase a little bit more. And that's just based off of our lives. Our lives are different. I'm talking to you from my house. We have almost 300 employees at Better Car People. I have managers I've never met face to face physically, right? So our lives have changed to be able to work with more flexibility. So these after hour leads, any lead, any response you have, you want to be able, every time you reach out to a consumer, you want it to be a value. If it's not a value, just don't do it, because we are more, I say everyone, we are more likely to not work with you if you don't send us value. So it's really an elimination game. It's very easy to engage with a lot of people. So normally, rather than picking out the person I really want to work with, I'm eliminating people I don't want to work with. So we have to find those after our leads. We have to find a way to deliver value to those consumers.
And just about how times are different. I mean, what's the old expression? This is more powerful than the computers that sent the rockets to the moon.
Yeah. They got back. Apollo 13 got back from the moon with a Omega Speedmaster watch and a grease pencil. Yes, we have a lot. It's a lot easier now to do that. And that's another thing that I've been in this forever, Jake. We're different generations. And you're dealing with a newer generation also, and we have to realize that people do things differently. To be able to engage in the way and the time that someone wants to be engaged, that's the secret to doing business.
So with that said, what are people who are filling out overnight leads, what are they looking for?
Okay, so value. So let's define value. Value is time. It's save me time, give me some transparency, right? And help build trust, transparency, and time. That's value. So if I have an after-hour lead, I need to be able to send out an email or text. If we're text, you have to have somebody there to respond, because they receive a text, they need the response. But let's say we're sending out an email. We're not open until the morning. Then we need to have value in that email. So it cannot be an email where the value is just someone hitting reply and waiting for another response. We have to build into that email. It's a little app. So whether first about the brand and the vehicle, and then second about your dealership value proposition and why you're better than everybody else. If it's 2:00 in the morning, that's finally quiet, I get to sit on my computer and actually look for a new vehicle. Then give me as much stuff to go through as I possibly can without you. And then a monitoring system for you to know that I did that, so you can understand my value when you call me back in the morning. And you start over with saying, how can I help you? You should know what we've done.
And when you think about how they're coming in, does lead source matter with after hour leads?
So if we're breaking this down, and then and I'm sure our audience here, as students of the game, you've already figured this out. So lead source. So I need to engage with the consumer in a way that they want to work with me and not eliminate me. So I need every single item about them so I can honestly ask a good question. So the first thing is I have their name and their email address. Sometimes email address gives me something, I'm getting a business email address instead of a personal email address. Lead source, you cannot look past lead source. You cannot respond to a black book online lead of a trade appraisal the same as you would a new vehicle lead from a manufacturer website. If you do, you're really, really missing out. And if you don't have a system that can do that after hours, you should. I mean, there wasn't one. We built one in 2010. That's why we did it. But so for instance, let's look at this. I believe that the best way to get engagement is to ask a good question. Asking a question shows you know what you're looking at, what you're doing. It without kind of having to brag about yourself. It's how we establish relationships. Jake, and when you and I talked about this, we asked questions about each other, right? This is how you establish relationships. So how can I ask a better question? Now let's look at the difference between a new car lead, let's say from a Cadillac website. Okay, Cadillac experiencing a great growth in new customers coming in there. And then we have one from Black Book Online, which is somebody's doing a trade appraisal. Well, on that new Cadillac, I would ask if this, hopefully I already know this, but is this their first time looking at a Cadillac, or is this their first time looking at this particular model? It probably is. I actually know it is, so that's a great question to ask. Black Book Online lead, even if it came in about a Cadillac, I wouldn't ask a question about that Cadillac. I would ask a question about their trade-in, because they spent 10 minutes, getting their trade appraised, and they've told you that's important to me. How about we handle this first before we go any further? So lead source becomes very, very valuable to be able to ask that question and get that initial engagement. If you have a problem with engagement, that's all that you need to look at. If I have a problem with somebody replying or clicking on buttons or text or returning my phone calls, we need to look at how we're engaging out with them if we're showing that value.
What about email? What kind of engagement do you see with email?
Yes. So again, biggest thing is we cannot expect a reply for him to reply. That's hard, right? But if I can turn my email into a mini app, if I can ask a question and have two different buttons for them to click, one of the harder response emails would be a hand raiser email. One that, somebody went to a ball game and to get a cap, they filled in a survey, okay, and you get that at the dealership, and it gunks up the works because you'll get 1,000 of those at one time. It's very difficult, right? Well, on that, there's usually a question of how soon are you looking to buy a new vehicle, right? 3 months, 6 months, right now, that kind of thing. We came up with it thinking about this. We're like, okay, this person is not very committed to buying a car. They got a baseball hat. What can I do to make an email that they'd actually reply back to? Because they shouldn't really. I mean, you think you wouldn't, right? And then what we did was come up with, okay, you said you're going to look at a car in 6 months. With any of these items make you think about that quicker? And we had a button for no down payment, more for my trade-in, lower interest rate, and so we had, so all it would take for someone is to look at that and go, oh, that email, click, and then once they click, now they're on par with every other lead I have. So that's the kind of thing is we can just get them to engage and make it as simple as possible. Again, like the phone, right? Like you're used to an app, be able to do that. If you can do that, then you're gonna have a lot better chance of engaging. Again, we don't have to be the best, we don't have to do this perfectly. We just have to be better than every other dealership they're talking to. So you don't have to be faster than a bear. You just have to be faster than the people with you. Yeah. So it's something that you can do this incrementally. If you're hearing this and you're like, whoa, this takes a whole system, you're like, just take one lead source, look at it, make a change, monitor and see what the data tells you, and you can get better on your own.
So, of course, depending on the time, some things are more appropriate to try to get to immediately, to get an immediate response. How do you choose? What gets a response?
Oh, I got you. So there's a big deal here on when you're looking at those leads, what it gives you. Most times is someone is filling out a lead form, right? And you're looking at the lead source. There's no other information. There's just a vehicle of interest, hopefully a trade-in, and their name, right? And their email address. And then we look at the lead source. So the lead source tells us if maybe they're looking, we look at 3 different types of lead sources, and I'll just get a little deeper into this for a moment. All right, so you have your website. All right, your website; those are your people. They send they went to your website because they trust you. All right. If they go to any other website, including the manufacturer's website, they don't trust you. Okay, so let's say, and I am Matthew.belk, Ford, right? If they go to Matthew.belk Ford, great, they trust me. If they go to Ford.com, they're inside my market area, but they didn't trust me enough to go fine. They went to Ford. So I need to recognize that. And if they're coming from Auto Trader or some other third-party website, they definitely don't trust me. So I have to work on building. That's one of those things I have to look on building trust. So how important it is to respond quickly. It's of the most vital thing that you can do. Okay. Other than sending value. Okay. So if you respond quickly with no value, then it's better not to respond. You're the closest Ford store to them anyway. Hopefully they'll show up. Okay. All right. That's better than eliminating yourself. But if you are in this, and this is our job, right, to get engagement, then we have to do it quickly. So how quick is quick enough? I've heard all kinds of times, less than 30 minutes, less than 15 minutes. There's a lot of stats on this, and 90% of all statistics are made up. But these are good, if after 20 minutes, your closing ratio goes down by 50%. So that's something they've looked at over time. It hasn't changed. We got to get with them. So that makes a sense for us too. So Jake, if you sent me an email over and I did not get back to you right away, let's say it's 30 minutes later, I know you are definitely in another meeting, right? Potentially about a completely different subject, right? So I have to now take you back out of whatever else you're doing to get you back into something like buying a car. That's going to be more difficult. If I can meet you at the time you've set aside to think about this, then I have a much higher chance of engaging and connecting with you. So that's what that response time makes a difference.
Well, it's as we always say, and we run in, we constantly have to remind ourselves of this, as I'm sure you do too, but people are not thinking of you as much as you are thinking of them.
Right.
So like you said, when they've designated that time to think about buying a car, when they're out of that, they're thinking about something else, though you're still thinking about how to get them to buy a car. So
Right.
you're totally right there. But does a customer submitting a lead at midnight really expect a response quickly?
Well, I would think that they expect a response quickly, but the thing is are we ready to deliver that value, right? So I can send out an autoresponder. And if I should give an autoresponder that gives them some ability to click deeper to find out more information. But really, and this is where Better Car People in our overnight BDC came up with was I really should respond with a custom response in that time. If I do, I'm beating everybody. A consumer definitely is shopping more than one dealership, and right now they're shopping more than one brand. MIT does a consideration survey. It's done it for 20 or 30 years for the manufacturers, and that's how much someone would consider a manufacturer like a Buick or a Lexus, that consideration. COVID blew that consideration out of the water. Someone will go from a Mercedes to a Genesis like that. One of the reasons cars are a lot better. It used to be more differentiation between that, but now it is differentiation. I said that. I made up a word there. All right. So, but now, so now we're not just looking at the three Nissan stores around me. We're looking at every other manufacturer. So with that consideration there, we really have to see, can I have that value at that time? So they want to be at midnight. Can I respond with a good response? We have since 2010 have people sitting around 24/7, 365 responding to those emails. Now, the first part is be able to give a good response that gives value. The next thing though is there any personal information in there? Did they ask a question? If we do, then if we send out an autoresponder, we're really ignoring that question until the morning, until they're doing something different, possibly sleeping. That doesn't work as well. So really, if we're again, students of the game and professionals, we should be able to answer that question anytime they want to send it in. If we want to beat everybody, we just want more than our fair share.
Well, I think one thing that is important to go over here for everyone is when we talk about after hours, well, that's a wide range, right? There's a difference between something coming in at 6 p.m. and something coming in at 2 a.m., right? Those are both still after hours.
Right.
So 40% come in after hours. Can you kind of break that up a little bit?
Sure, no problem. So we look at after hours 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. Okay, so that's the times on that. Yours may be different. It may be more. We deal with dealers in Detroit that are closed on all weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So after hours is 9:01 on Friday, and they would be responded back to on Monday. So it depends completely on your area. In Fayetteville, North Carolina, I'll tell you this: theirs is much earlier. The majority of their leads come in much earlier. It's a massive. It's the largest military base in the contiguous United States. Okay, so they go to work early, they come out of work early, and you have that. Or if we're back in Vegas, as you can imagine, leads come later. It's really so you gotta. But you can look at this. You can find this on what you're looking at. If you're the smallest dealer in the country, it still would take 3 full-time equivalent employees to answer your leads after hours to cover shifts. So you have to find some way to be able to do this. Either if you're not using someone like us that helps you, then you need to come up with that fantastic autoresponder that hopefully can change based off a lead source, right? And you have to ask your CRMs about that. And then you have to look at what your response is the next day. We came up with something that you guys can use, and that is a we're open email for every after hours lead. So at 9 a.m. in the morning, we send out a second email that says we're open. Would you like a phone call right now? And they can click for that phone call, and Volie can help you how that works, and you can still be attached, right, to the consumer, or if they'd like to schedule a phone call later on. We also found, though, that calling at 9 a.m., someone who's sending a lead at 2 a.m. in the morning doesn't work. They're sleeping or doing something else. So we found but you guys, you have all that information on when people are more likely to answer the phone. So it's definitely it's based on your area when the volume comes in, but it does not tend to change. Once you know your area, it's your area, and that's when they come in. So
so just to first off, I love the idea of the, hey, we're open, would you like a call email? I think that's got to be highly effective at getting back to these people.
It helps a lot.
Yeah. And but just to clarify, then, when you talk after hours, 40% come in after hours, you're talking after 9 p.m.
After 9 p.m. to 9 a.m.
Wow, that's a lot of people who are coming in. When I think after hours for a lot of these stores, and keep in mind, some stores will, like you said, staff, and some stores call on weekends too.
Yeah.
But so in your opinion, you think it is, you think it's prudent to staff until at least 9 p.m. or what would you say there?
Well,
for the stores?
I would say that at this point you would be staffing till 9 p.m. I unless you're in some, some area that you feel like that works, and you can A/B test this always, but we started Better Car People in 2010 because General Motors, and if in your GM stores, anybody who's with GM stores, you already know this, but GM got tired of lead response. Lead response was over a day, so they set up a program where you had to respond within 10 hours. Within 10 minutes on a 24-hour clock. Now, if you're with Ford or Stellantis, or these guys are actually, the manufacturer's still grading you only during normal business hours, right? Because those customers only respond during normal business hours. It's not true. For 24 hours. So 2010 is where GM realized that these leads are coming all the time, and so how can we do that? They put that program together. They had a 3% higher closure ratio just by saying that there's after our leads of all of GM when they did that. So this is something that the good news for you, if this is the first time you're hearing about after our leads, is you have an opportunity. Is that this is something you can look at. Just pay a little more attention right now, or if you're looking for somebody like us, we'd love to help you out with that. It's a simple thing to do, but just paying a little more attention to these consumers can absolutely get you a 3% higher closing ratio. We've seen it over and over and over again.
Well, it makes perfect sense to me because, well, during your business hours, people are working and they're not buying a car, right? So I think it makes perfect sense. This has been a lot of great info. We are going to take a quick break, bring Eliza from Volie in here. She has something she'd like to share with everybody, and then we'll go ahead and get back at it. Don't forget, everyone, if you have any questions for Matt here or myself, put them in the chat, the Q&A here on Zoom, or you can email me, jake@volie.com, and we'll get to those at the end. So with that said, let's get Eliza in here.
Hey there. Thank you, Jake. Can you turn on the screen share?
Darn it. I went 2 months and I remembered to turn that on right away. And here we are back at square one.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to switch gears for just a second. I want to talk about some agent efficiency metrics and kind of thresholds for what we look for, what our team looks for, to kind of say, ooh, this is something worth digging into. This number is too high. So kind of switching gears from what we were just talking about, but I have pulled up, this is the agent efficiency report. We talk about these metrics a lot, but I want to kind of give you some of those thresholds where I might say, oh, that's not acceptable. That's worth looking into, or at least identifying why that's happening. So I have one slide for inbound and then one for outbound. Looking at inbound first, I'm going to start with this ignores number. Ignores happen when an inbound call is ringing on a rep's screen and they either click decline or they click nothing at all. For 3 rings, if they don't click anything, that counts as an ignore. So it's an inbound call that rang on the rep screen, but that they didn't pick up. I would say no more than 10 of those per week. That's giving you, 1 or 2 per day. I think that's plenty of leniency. This account, the screenshot here, I'm looking at a week, and you can see some of their reps who were in 7 days that week only had 2 inbound ignored calls. So no more than 10, I would say, in that number, and that's still giving some fudge room kind of thing. Next one on inbound that I'm going to talk about is ASA. That stands for average speed of answer. That's, again, when that inbound call is ringing on their screen, how many seconds go by before they click accept? I try to keep that under 3 seconds. I think a lot of times reps spend time trying to read every little detail that they get in that pop-up. In that pop-up, they'll get the store name, the campaign name that the customer is calling into, the customer's name and phone number. The reassurance that I would give your team is none of that information is going anywhere. As soon as they click accept, they're going to open up the communication center, and all of that information is still available, but the customer's not on hold anymore. So try to keep that under 3 seconds. Just as soon as you see that pop up, if you're available and you're not right about to go on break, just go ahead and click accept. Other 2 numbers on here that I'll talk about are average talk time and average wrap time. Talk time for both inbound and outbound, kind of look for outliers, look for people that stand out to you. There's a pretty big variance that I see on the inbound side. It ranges anywhere from like 2 to 6 minutes, depending on what kind of conversations your reps are fielding. So look for outliers there. Someone who has a much longer talk time might be getting stuck on some objections, some things that you could help with. Wrap time for inbound, I say keep it under 60 seconds. Gives the rep plenty of time to finish taking notes, finish setting an appointment if that's what they're doing. Hopefully they're multitasking. In this account, it looks like all of the reps are well under 60 seconds. So that makes me think that they're probably multitasking on that call. They're taking notes as they go, kind of thing. Outbound, couple of things to touch on. Skips and suspicious calls are kind of your red flags on outbound calls. Skips are when the agent is skipping over that record. They're not calling that customer. Review those on a regular basis. Work with your Volie rep. There's an export where you can look at every single record that was skipped, and you can read the notes that the rep is putting in there. It might be something that you want to sit down and address with the agent, or it might be good feedback for you. Maybe we can filter our campaigns a little bit more so that they're not having to use the skip button. Suspicious calls are those really short duration outbound calls. It's possible that this happens by mistake. I initiate a phone call and then, my doorbell rings or my manager comes and taps me on the shoulder and I need to end the call. Maybe that happens a couple of times a week. Shouldn't happen more than 10 times per week. And again, I'm probably being a little bit generous here. In this account in a week, they had no more than 3. So kind of a red flag to look for there. Average ready, we're talking about the time spent before an outbound call is initiated. Decide what's acceptable there. Maybe give your rep 3 or 4 things that they should be checking before they initiate a call. Keep that under 60 seconds. Outbound calls are average talk time. If you have a reasonable contact percentage, your average talk time might be right around 1 minute. So I don't want my team spending more time researching for a phone call than they are actually, on the call. So kind of both of those metrics there, something to watch for. And then last one, average wrap on the outbound side, try to keep that under 30 seconds. On the outbound side, since a chunk of these phone calls are going to be going to voicemail, there's not a lot of note taking that needs to go into those calls. So that should keep the wrap time overall down. So again, just kind of look for any outliers there. Anyone who is maybe getting stuck after the phone call, kind of hiding in that wrap up time. Agent efficiency report. Take a look at this, talk with your rep about if you do see anything hairy here or anything suspicious. We might be able to give some tips or some feedback on things that you can dig into even just a little bit deeper. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Liza. And we'll go ahead and boot you back to the attendee list. But thank you for coming on and walking through that with everyone. And as always, guys, if you have other questions for Liza and the team as well, feel free to ask those as well, or reach out to your designated Volie rep that you have. But okay, well, let's go ahead and keep going. We have a few more questions here that I'm going to get through with Matt, and then we'll go ahead and take some Q&A. We've had a couple questions come in to my email address. Don't forget, guys, you can go ahead and email them to me, Jake@Volie, or ask them in the Q&A chat, and we'll get to those as well. So something that you had talked about before we broke there is that sometimes leads come in and they have a comment or a question. And how many, what percentage of leads do have a comment and a question? And branching off of that, what are they typically asking?
Right. So that's the big deal, right? So if you have a question and you don't answer it, then you really are ignoring somebody, right? So 17 to 25% of leads have a question. That's based off a lead source, but they and again, since 2010, this is what we've been working on. We will take in 13 million leads a month. So it's a lot of leads coming in. So these questions are very, very important to us, and the efficiency and effectiveness that's what we get paid for, and that's how we get our margin. So we think about this all the time. We recently built a data office just to work through these and find out, start grouping them a little differently and things like that. But most of the questions are about inventory availability. Honestly, that's the big one they're looking at, and we should have that just about up to the moment inventory, or as close as we can be, as close as you, other than touching the vehicle. And in dealership, you already know touching a vehicle doesn't count either, because someone can buy the vehicle and no one put the sold sticker on it. That's there, but we have a lot of those. Does it have a full size spare? How is it with car seats? I mean, there's all kinds. It depends what they have. And the big deal there is you don't have to necessarily know the answer to the question, but you do have to absolutely address it right then. If you address the question and say, I'll check and see if it has a full size spare. If I say that, then that stops that consumer. They have somebody working with them. Again, they're trying to eliminate everybody else. So once they hear that, they get to eliminate. And that's why we've had people sitting around 24/7, 365 for 13 years. It's been a big deal. And that's the other crazy part. Again, this is all about figuring out your cohorts, right? You already found out 40% of your leads come after hours. Now you found out that 17 to 25% of them have a question. If they have a question, and if you address that question, then that is doubling or tripling your effectiveness. They are going to get back a hold of you. So it's one of those things that as you start having these best practices, either you're doing it or you have somebody else doing it for you, you get to see that better customer, that customer more prepared. Really what we're doing with leads, because there's so many leads, right? Is finding in-market consumers that can purchase a vehicle from you. And if they ask a question, they are telling you, I am an in-market consumer. There's no better way. There's no lead scoring or anything like that. A actual question from a consumer is the best indication that they can actually buy a car.
And when you talk about your agent is, they should know how to say this. They should, if they don't know the answer, address it. And hey, I'm going to go get the answer. What are some of the other key things that you should train an agent on?
Oh gosh. Okay. So, asking good questions is again, that is the engagement key. If you When I met my wife, I did not. We didn't want to talk about me. I was a car salesman. Let's talk about her. So I asked questions about her. That's how I established that relationship. We should kind of do the same thing. It helps out a lot of an agent asking questions, because otherwise we think that we want to put everything available to an agent to be able to answer questions. So inventory, having that inventory is very important. But when someone asks for a specific vehicle, it makes a lot of sense to ask why they're interested in that specific vehicle. Do they have a specific use? If they do, then we are giving, if we're an agent in a BDC and not the dealership, then we're giving the dealership more information to be of value to that customer. So I would think, as far as agents, as being able to ask good questions. It comes in, if for you guys that have just run BDCs and you haven't sold cars, it's invaluable. I sat at a desk at Hendrick at one point early in my career, and someone came in and asked for a bench seat in the second row of a Tahoe. Right, there were no. I had literally 100 Tahoes in stock, and we had none like that. So the salesperson came up and wanted me to, dealer transfer, find this bench seat in the second row of a Tahoe. And I asked, did you ask the consumer, why they want that? He's like, no, they just asked for it. I'm like, well, I picked up the phone, called. It was a lady. I said, why are you looking for the bench seat in the back? She's like, well, I have, 2 car seats. And I need to put the car seats in. So I wanted the bench, so I had extra room there. And I said, I understand how you feel. At the time we had 6 kids. And it's like, I understand about car seats. Turns out when you have the 2 captain's chairs, you actually have room to get the other kids to the back if you needed to. So that's fantastic. So now I had 100 cars on the lot to choose from. So it's, again, invaluable for you to ask good questions. You're going to show that you're worthwhile to the consumer because you're asking those questions. And I think you just get them a lot closer to actually purchasing a vehicle.
Did you make that sale?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. What is a good number to benchmark for with conversion rate comparing overnight leads to daytime leads?
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So again, 92% of all statistics are made up. Okay, let's go with that, right? Okay, you have to look at your own numbers here. So the first thing you need to do is you need to look at run the report in your CRM. That's what's your after hour leads. That's the first thing. Okay. So then when you have that, then you look at your closing ratio off of that. You are going to have a lower closing ratio for your after hour leads. It's going to be a thing because you're probably ignoring them right now. You just wait to call them the next day, and you probably call them at 9 o'clock in the morning when they come in, and when you come in, and that's maybe even upsetting the customer more than just not answering. I think that, again, you can look at if you answer these leads correctly, a 3% higher closing ratio. And that's because I think it should be higher. And I cut the number in half just to make it believable, right? Because you would do something for a 3% higher closing ratio. If you get good at this, particularly your website leads for after hours, then you can see better than that. So that's, but just run those numbers on your own first. I have found that there's a lot of old percentages out there that everybody wants. We used to have 50% engagement, and then 50% of the people appoint, 50% come in, and then you sell 15% of vehicles. Mm-hmm. It's all based off of lead source at this point. So it's look at your own numbers. I won't make up a number for you.
Sounds great. Well, a lot of great information here and great data for folks who are looking to internalize some of this stuff and run it at their own stores, and really appreciate you walking us through that. With that said, we work with you guys, and I know you do a great job. So if anyone is looking to do this out of house, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure, no problem at all. Yeah, so very, very compatible with Volie. So we run a virtual BDC that is powered by Volie. We could not run our virtual BDC as effectively if we didn't have overnight BDC in place for that initial quality response. I'll two little things about what it does. We have real people to answer those questions. We also are a manufacturer mystery shop compliant house. So that initial response, we know what the manufacturer is looking for and how to get you the highest scores on those. And we integrate very well with Volie as far as if you have a better initial response, then you're going to get more phone calls and you're going to have more people to call back. You can go to bettercarpeople.com, which is the easy way to do it. Or I put in the Q&A. I think it went out to everybody. Just matthew@bcp.us. I can type that in here too. Either way, just mention Volie so we know where you came from. Let me see, I'm doing that right now.
We'll also go ahead and throw your
Yeah.
email and stuff in the description on the YouTube when we post this next week.
But it's something that, and again, my guys would love to talk to you about how to do this yourself also. Don't mind sharing any of these things. But we have 13 years of tech that make it a little easier. So love to check out. No contracts, 30-day out. So easy.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead. We've had a couple questions come in, not offline, but through my email. And then let's go ahead and get to those. And if you have any other questions, anyone, put those in the Q&A here on Zoom. But first question we have is, when you come in the morning, how do you decide who to call first on these overnight leads?
Oh, great question. LIFO, last in, first out. So I have we've always done that is if I got something in at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's 9, then go ahead and make that phone call, right? And then work your way back to let's say if you're closed on Sunday, then you're the later on you're going to be contacting the guys from Saturday night. But that's what I usually end up with. Also, I don't mind if we can't make all the phone calls, if you have a way of seeing if there's actual customer comments, I get a hold of those guys first.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I think that's a great response. Any tips on what an autoresponder message should include if I can't staff my BDC after hours?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so it's a mini website. We want to ask a good question, the best question you can, possibly off a lead source. But then we need to have navigation just like it's a website, right? So they need to be able to click in finance and go look at that, do a trade appraisal. All that can be across your banner or somewhere there. You need to have, it's an email, right? So it can be as long as you want to. It's just that make sure we're not burying the lead. So anything above the fold, which is what can be seen on the screen, that needs to be about the consumer, quick buttons for them to touch as far as that information, be able to go to similar vehicles with one click. But then after the fold, this is a time for you to shine. There should be a dealership value proposition on this email. I know it makes it look long, does not matter. It scrolls, right? It can be, they don't want to look at it, they don't have to. Get your work done in the beginning. Question about let's say the vehicle interest, a value proposition about that vehicle, and then now it's ready to be able to put why your dealership is better. Dude, it may sound hokey, it works. They're looking to trust you, give them reasons to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more here. If I'm coming up with templates for my after hours autoresponder message, what factors should I be looking at to create my templates? You mentioned lead source. Anything else?
Oh, okay, gotcha. So lead source is lead source. Let's first divide it up. So we can look at each lead source. Like I said, if it's a trade-in, if trade is involved at all, ask a question about the trade-in. That's going to be the number one thing you want to do. But your website, manufacturer website, and third party, at least divide your template. There should be 3 different templates based off of that, right? Thank you for trusting us is a great intro into your website lead. Go ahead and lean into that. Then just look at there's some things that people like a TrueCars lead. TrueCars leads, they have a certificate, right? You got to mention they went on the website, they filled it out. You have to know what they're doing. You have to mention that certificate in the first paragraph of your email, or else again you're just kind of ignoring them. So I would say you have to dig deep into the consumer's experience on these. and then be able to put that in that first. Do not bury the lead. Do not make them have to search for the value. Let them know right off the bat, I know where you are. I know what you're trying to accomplish. Here's a vehicle. It's a great vehicle. This is why. And here's some ways for you to get some more value, but get that up there first.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you change a call script if it is after hours instead of daytime?
Oh, it's just on the intro, right? That you appreciate you appreciate their time and you want to save them. If they're after hours, you know that time is or at least let's say we can assume that time is important to them, right? That they've got something else going on during time. So I would lean in on everything I'm trying to do is try to save you time. And if you come to the dealership, make that as efficient as possible. That's going to be more important to someone after hours because they've already identified that they don't work during normal business hours. So in your call script, I would lean into, again, I mentioned value is trust, transparency, and time. I would lean into that time. The more we get accomplished here on the phone, the less you'll have to do when you come in the dealership.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. That was all the questions we had. Definitely some good ones came in after the fact there. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Matt, for taking the time. A lot of great information. And like I said before, when I post this on YouTube next week, we will go ahead and include your contact information. So if anyone's listening can get a hold of you if they have any other questions or want to reach out about outsourcing. So any last minute thoughts here?
No, just fantastic working with you guys. If you guys are Volie customers, then you're ahead of the game already. We're trying to break out of the CRM, right? That's the kind of thing, not check boxes, but get a hold of people. So I think that we're doing a good job of it, and we're definitely crushing some other dealers. So good job.
Awesome. Thanks everyone, and have a fantastic day.
Thanks.